like hauling frogs in a wheelbarrow. 2 days before the slated start of the Geneva II peace conference in Syria, organizers having a time of it, getting all interested parties to the table. On Sunday, the UN Secretary General saved U.S. blushes by instead taking the credit/blame for inviting Tehran. Ban Ki-moon saying he'd told the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif the aim was that the talks would lead to a transitional governing body in Damascus. But Iran now insists there are no preconditions. For Saudi Arabia, the Turkey-based Syrian opposition, that makes Bashar al-Assad's main backer in the conflict unwelcome. Washington going one further, asking the UN to uninvite Tehran. As for Assad, he points the finger at the Saudis and other countries that in his view are, quote, exporting terrorism. European-born jihadists going to Syria in growing numbers is also becoming an issue, with the fear of a boomerang effect. Here in this country, the Interior Minister warning of 700 French nationals who either are going, are there, or have come back from Syria, calling those budding jihadists the biggest danger our country faces in the coming years, end quote. Which brings us back to Geneva II. How has the radicalization of the conflict changed the equation? Ultimately, what is the aim of those peace talks that, again, are due to get underway on Wednesday? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Geneva II, with or without Iran. With us to talk about it, longtime Syrian dissident Haitham Manaa. Welcome back to the France 24 debate.
Thank you.
Welcome back as well to Emma Suleiman, former spokesperson for the Syrian National Council. Thank you for being with us. We want to thank, from London, Olivier Guitta, Director of Research at the Henry Jackson Society, for joining us. And in Cairo, the Financial Times correspondent, Borzu Daragahi, who has made trips inside of Syria, of course, over the past 3 years to report on what's going on there. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. Let's start with this Monday's news. Iran's place at the table in Switzerland, the engraved invite coming with a disclaimer.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has extended an invitation to Iran on the basis that they understand that the basis of the conference is the full implementation of the original Geneva communique, a transitional governing body. I think it would be very helpful to hear that publicly from Iran.
It would be helpful to hear it publicly, but what has been heard publicly out of Tehran? Well, a foreign ministry spokesperson quoted by the ISNA news agency saying that we have always rejected any precondition for attending the Geneva II meeting on Syria. Based on the official invitation that we have received, Iran will attend the Geneva II without any precondition. And that has forced the U.S. to issue that uninvite request. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, as we speak, urgently considering his options. That according to a spokesperson for the United Nations. I guess at this point in time, Haitham Manaa, do you think that the talks will open Wednesday in Geneva?
I don't know. It's possible that all stop, and also I think that Russia and the States decided really to do all their possible to do it in the 22nd. And we tried with them to change the time, to give us 2 weeks more, or they refused both any discussion about the timing. For that, we refused to go.
So you're saying the U.S. and Russia could have perhaps delayed things, but Iran, pretty steadfast here so far.
You know, the question of Iran, I think it's superficial. It's not real question. Because if you are a part of the problem, you must be a part of the solution. And Iran must be involved in these discussions to be a part of the decisions and to respect the result of these negotiations. If it is not, nobody can ask Iran to accept what happened in Geneva. For that, we asked it from the beginning. All parts of the problem to come to Geneva too. I think that this is a bad question because the Syrian National Council, for example, never accepted Geneva Communique. The coalition never accepted Geneva Communique. The Syrian regime never accepted Geneva Communique. Why we ask only the Iranian to do it? We must ask everybody or nobody.
Emma Suleiman.
I agree on what Mr. Manna said. One part, which is definitely Iran has to be has to attend and participate in the Geneva peace talk, because obviously Iran is regime is first ally and they're funders and they have their military on the ground. They're part of the problem and they would not respect it unless they're part of it. However, we should ask ourselves, why did Ban Ki-moon send an invite to Iran? Knowing that it was one of the key conditions of the Syrian National Council, they will not attend if Iran is going. So why did it happen? Why did they send them an invite just a day after, and Iran?
And what's your answer to that?
I have no idea. We should wait and see. It's in an hour. In an hour, we'll find out. I think there are two possible scenarios. If Iran doesn't go, then the Syrian National Council will come out stronger because they have at least achieved one of the preconditions they pushed for. If they didn't, I think they will still have to go, but they will look much weaker. So I'm not sure what guarantees did they get to do such a thing and suspend their attendance based on Iran. Or if it was just a random decision taken without any reflection. So I'm not really, I don't know. We have to wait and see. And we'll find out in an hour. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Go ahead.
Yes. I know very well Mr. Ban Ki-moon. He cannot send as an invitation without the green line, the green light from the states. He cannot do it. For that, I think that there was a deal. We will invite the Iranian delegation after the end of the problem of the Western-backed coalition. And they did it exactly as it must be.
All right, but since then it's unraveled with that statement out of Tehran. Let's go to Borzu Daragahi. Borzu, if you were a betting man, would you say that there are going to be talks Wednesday?
I think there will be talks. I think that more likely than not, Ban Ki-moon will rescind the invitation based on the latest comments that we've heard from the spokesman for the Secretary General. I think there's a lot of pressure on the Syrian opposition at this point. They're already on very tenuous ground with regard to the people on the ground in Syria, the people who are fighting against Bashar al-Assad, the people who are the activists who actually are living in Syria. There's a very tenuous connection between the Syrian National Coalition and those people on the ground. Some say that they have no real credibility with those people on the ground. And if Iran were to attend those talks in Montreux and Geneva, it would even worsen the relationship between the Syrian National Council, the activists abroad, and those inside the country. Iran has a very bad reputation and is viewed as a very malignant force in Syria by the opposition. There's also a geopolitical dimension, of course. Saudi Arabia is the greatest backer of the Syrian opposition at this point, and it doesn't want anything that would increase the legitimacy and the regional clout of Iran at this point. It views the Syria conflict very much as a conflict with Iran, and it will, fight to the end to make sure that Iran gets no advantages, especially after Iran has so successfully worked with the West to get some kind of sanctions relief this week and some kind of agreement over their nuclear program.
And do you see the discussion on Syria, where we've seen the United States pressuring to get for that uninvitation to Iran, and the nuclear issue, where we've seen this Monday an easing of sanctions on the part of Washington and the EU. Do you see them being hermetically sealed and separate?
Well, it's hard. I think they are separate. I wouldn't say that they're hermetically separate. I think there is an effort on the part of Western powers to resolve the Iran issue. I think that, for example, in the Obama administration, they definitely view the nuclear issue as separate from Iran's regional ambitions and the issue of the Levant, of the Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, and so forth. At least in terms of their steps in the coming days and so on. There's some kind of ringing in my ear. I don't know what's causing that.
All right, we'll try to fix that ringing in your ear. Olivier Guitta, your thoughts right now. Are we seeing it all unravel?
Listen, I would concur with Borzu that part of that invitation is linked to the fact that Iran is coming back to the forefront of the news and of the negotiations. The Americans and the Russians that are pushing for that agreement on the nuclear file with Iran are basically pushing for them to reach out to the international community. So I would put to you that those two issues are linked as far as a PR coup at this point in time.
A PR coup, Haitham Mana. Your thoughts? Is it a PR coup?
I don't know. In my opinion, with all contacts which we had before, there was a minimalization of the role of Syria. They tried to put us under the fait accompli. And really, in the 2 last months...
So who's they and who's us? Explain that to us.
Us as Syrian opposition, inside or outside the coalition, in the national coordination body and in the coalition, and other organizations also. And really, in a moment, we had the feeling that we are a game of nations now, and not we are a part of the Syrian solution. For that, all of these details, with or without Iranians, with or without other composition of the opposition, now is details for many people, and essentially for Russian and Americans. For them, the most important thing is to realize something essential. A process, long process, without any timing, and this long process can take a long of time with a lot of concession for the Syrian opposition. And unfortunately, we are not in a pole position to be today in Geneva as a part and to ask for realizing our program or the minimum of our revendications.
A process that shuts out the Syrian opposition. But you heard, for instance, the U.S. Secretary of State, we'll hear him later, John Kerry, say that, of course, this process should end with the ouster of Assad. Do you think he's not sincere when he says that?
You know, Hillary Clinton asked for that since 2 years. All of these declarations, we know very well that it is a free zone declaration without any price and without any engagement. What did they give us as Syrian people, from Russia to America, to the States, when we were in difficulties inside Syria? I think that now it is the time of others to decide in our place.
All right, so a broader chess game. Borzu Daragahi, your thoughts on why John Kerry, the U.S. Secretary of State, has invested so much energy since there was that threat of airstrikes against Syria, which never happened, of course, on the part of U.S. and some of its partners, including France. Why he's invested so much energy, meeting with the Russians several times, going to Switzerland on numerous occasions.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, I think just that the war has been an utter disaster for the region. I mean, the humanitarian consequences of the conflict, the destabilizing effects of the conflict on Iraq, on Lebanon, on Turkey, the growth of the jihadis thanks to this war, thanks to this conflict. The utter devastation has focused his attention on this conflict. Just talking, for example, today to people in Syria, and you know, my heart was breaking for them. They get milk maybe every 2 or 3 months, and at that, $12 a liter for milk. The consequences of Bashar al-Assad's decision to basically declare war on the majority of his people are just having reverberations across the whole region and across the world, and someone has to do something. I don't think that John Kerry has a choice but to deal with this issue that is just increasing in magnitude.
So in that case, why the preconditions when on Iran showing up at the talks?
Well, I think that those were, as I was mentioning before, I think those are as a result of what the Syrian opposition and their main backers in Saudi Arabia are demanding right now. That has to do with the regional aspects of this conflict, as well as the tenuous relationship between the Syrian exiled opposition abroad and those inside the country that are on the front lines of this conflict.
Emma Suleiman, how has your position evolved, would you say, over the past year when it comes to this?
I think I agree. Today we're really not concerned with what's going on. We are totally isolated from the international agreement or settlement. As Syrian, whether at the opposition side or the people's side, or even the regime himself, I don't think Assad has the final had the final call. I think he is, of course, he gets his final decisions from Russia or Iran or whatever. I mean, his backers. So and this is today. That's why the Syrian themselves are polarized today. There are people who need an end regardless what the results are for the 3 years conflict toward peace talk, and they see hope in the Geneva peace talk. And there are people who are against because they know there is nothing coming out of it, because we haven't seen any serious pressure, especially from the American, because I think the American can, if they wanted, pressure the Russian to pressure Assad to at least allow humanitarian corridors or remove the embargo, or at least to stop the bombardment if he doesn't want to ceasefire. So all we hear, I mean, as Syrian, all we've heard in the last 3 years was just PR, and we know it's only PR. What we hear in the media doesn't reflect any whatsoever what is going on under the table between the geopolitical leaders
and what's going on in the ground. And of course, Borzu adding a dimension to that, which was of course the growing influence of jihadists inside of Syria. We're going to pick up on that point when we come back. This is the France 24 debate.